maybe not all of us here know what a typewriter is, but I still remember what a typewriter is. They would have to travel all the way to Manila to be able to get the authority to do so. And at the time, there wasn't Cebu Pac. There was only one airline, which didn't fly as frequently. So that meant that that mayor who needed to purchase a typewriter had to go all the way to Manila, and of course couldn't return the same day. So kailangan po doon matulog sa Manila. And those transactional costs actually represent a leakage or inefficiencies associated with it, which is one justification why some expenditure authority is delegated or devolved now to local government units. Okay. But at the same time, as I mentioned earlier, there are still some public goods and services that have spillover effects, or what we call in economics externalities. Ano po ito mga spillover effects? Well, wala siyang boundaries. Kunyari po, neighboring municipalities and one municipality provides better healthcare services. Nothing prevents a non-resident from going to the other municipality to avail of the better healthcare services. So that's a spillover effect. So sometimes the solution of that would be to bring healthcare to a higher level of government para to internalize the externalities. But then there are also those with spillover effects, and you also have to consider economies of scale as well as administrative and compliance costs. Anong halimbawa nito? I'll be citing later a recent Philippine Journal of Development article that I had co-authored on local water supply and governance issues in this. So in the case of local water supply, sometimes it makes more sense or it's more feasible if several municipalities cooperate or neighboring areas, barangays cooperate to provide this the water supply. So yun po halimbawa din po yun. And also redistribution and equity. Though this one, typically it's redistribution, ibig sabihin natin po natin yung mga typically social welfare programs to. So it was nice also to hear from ASEC, Josie yesterday from the SWD about their plans to, scale down some programs or, help LGUs develop the delivery of certain programs like the AIX and the PWD. But at the same time, theory would suggest, let's say in the case of 4Ps or any conditional cash transfer program, really it should be the national government that should be on top of this. So it was good to hear that they are still maintaining the 4Ps at the national government level. So that's how theory would suggest we identify or devolve the functions which are already defined in the Section 17 of the Local Government Code of the Philippines. And then redefined in the NBM, I think it's 140 or 138 of last year of the DBM. So there was an extensive list of which of the functions would be redevolved, as they say. Now, with respect to revenues, how do we assign this to different levels? One main factor is factor mobility. Ano ba tong factor po na to? These are factors of production. These are, inputs to production. So this would typically in economics be land, labor, and capital. And for the most of it, theory is aligned that land taxes should really be assigned to local governments. Now, there's also the administrative and compliance costs of collecting taxes, as well as redistribution and equity concerns. But for the most part, the reason why I'm presenting to you this is because in the literature, and it's not just for the Philippines, typically devolved functions or the spending responsibilities are not sufficiently funded by local revenues, which is why the literature recognizes the need for what you call intergovernmental fiscal transfers. Ito po yung era natin noon, ngayon po yung NATA. Okay, now there are different ways to distribute the intergovernmental fiscal transfers. It could be based on the fiscal gap or the imbalance. It could be vertical. Ibig sabihin po, kung na-assign po ng national government itong responsibility sa lower levels of government, but the revenues are not enough, then they will be given transfers. At ito po yung ginagawa ng NATA. This is the purpose of the NATA. Okay? But at the same time, another manner by which a transfer would be redistributed could be for the purpose of correcting imbalances across horizontally across the different levels of within a level of local government. So kunyari po, nabanggit po kahapon ng dalawa nating mayors na LGUs are not created equally, which is correct. There are richer ones, there are poorer ones. So there could also be transfers, which is one of the purposes, I think, of the growth equity fund that's being implemented this year, to address or assist more those who need financial assistance, or ito yung tinatawag na fiscal equalization grant. Okay, so ito po yung equity fund. Now, doon po sa NATA and sa ERA, or the way the transfers can be defined, it would be pwedeng conditional po siya, pwedeng unconditional. Basically, yung ERA natin or the NATA is an unconditional grant, as we call in the literature. The only condition is that 20% of it must be spent for the local development fund, right? 20% of the annual ERA must be spent for the local development fund, which would typically be investment programs or infrastructure programs. And I'll be going back to that discussion later on. Pero pwede rin po maging conditional. Anong halimbawa po nito? Ang conditional grant in the Philippine structure, and I also have a published article on this in the Philippine Journal of Development, is the Performance Challenge Fund, now to be known as the Seal of Good Local Governance Fund. That has two conditions for an LGU to be eligible for it. And you guys all know this as well, better than me. The first condition is you have to satisfy or receive the Seal of Good Local Governance. That means you satisfy a certain level of governance that's deemed to be acceptable. And then it should be before, I don't know how it will look now, no? The PCF should be spent on certain priority areas. Ganun siya noon. So I don't know how it will be evolving now. But yun po, that's the basic structure behind decentralization. And I just like to note that whether you have a federalist government or a decentralized form of government, the principles are the same. The only difference is that with a unitary, you have you have a decentral. We have the LGC, the Local Government Code of the Philippines. With the federalist, it's in their constitution. So, but the principles are still basically the same. Now, before I continue to the adaptive governance, I wanted to show you really and premise what the contribution of local governments is to national government spending. Okay, because I think it's very important for you to realize and be proud that you are contributing to the economic growth and development whenever you spend. Okay, so national government expenditures as a proportion of GDP. So ang GDP natin ang tawag dito, national income, di po ba? So sum of the income of all goods and services produced in the economy, or it's a sum of the output of all goods and services produced in the economy. So as a percent of GDP, we have averaged since 1983 until 2022 about 16% of GDP. Ganon kalaki po yung size ng ating national government spending. Kasama po doon yung LGUs, sakop na siya, kasi kasama po kayo sa budget as percent of GDP. Okay. Now, we can divide this like you do. I know you're all perhaps familiar with of course you would be being local officials. We can divide this by expense class, no? And what I'm just trying to show here is that for the past 40 years, current operating expenditures received the largest share, averaging about 79%. Yung current operating expenditures, alam natin, kasama doon yung personal services, mga pasweldo, tsaka MOOE, maintenance and other operating expenses. Now, pre-COVID, the share of capital outlays has been increasing. So it dipped since 1983. Bumagsak po siya, less than 20% share of the budget. But in recent years, since let's say about 2014 yata to 2013, 2014, nag-spike siya, and then again, because of COVID, nag-dip siya. So later on, I'll be going back to this because moving forward, the next administration really has to be able to prioritize spending, but still include, of course, investments in human capital, social welfare, education, importantly, and health. Pero for economic to grow, evidence has shown that the fiscal multipliers are largest when you spend on infrastructure. Ano po yung fiscal multipliers? Ibig po sabihin nun, whenever any government, national government or local government spends, let's say at the local government, you want to build 1 kilometer of road. Okay, so you will bid this out. Yung contractor, magiging income niya yung 1 kilometer of road yan, yes. Pero yung contractor, gagastos din siya sa economy. It will create incomes for those that they will hire as workers, engineers, both skilled and unskilled workers. And at the same time, they would need supplies. So that would stimulate the economy. Mag-increase ng production ng cement, steel, gravel, and all of this. So that will create incomes for those who are employed in that industry, and so on and so forth. Sunod-sunod po yung effect nun. Yun po yung multiplier. And as I will show later and share with you, one of my colleagues at PIDS, she has a published article also in the Philippine Review of Economics, where the largest fiscal multipliers can be found at regional levels with respect to capital outlay spending. So moving forward, the way to go really is to balance it between both social service spending and capital outlay spending, both at the national and local levels. Now, let me show you here. If we cut the pie according to sector, okay, by sector. So we have here for the national government overall, social services has received the largest share since 1995. So ito po yung social services yung pinakamataas po dito. Now, economic services has had the second largest share since 2007. So ito po yung economic services, kasama dito agri, roads, telecommunications, tourism. Yan po yung economic services dito. This has been followed by general public services below, which if some of my papers have shown that general public services really gets the largest share of local government spendings overall. Okay, and defense. So that's by sector. So mostly on social services. Now, what is the budgetary implications of the Mandanas ruling in 2022? Okay, so for the NATA, there was a 38% increase of about 263.5 billion. Okay, totaling about 959 billion. This is about almost 20% of the national budget, as you can see here. The share of the ERA or NATA to national government expenditures. So dito, it dipped since 2011, and then it peaked in 2022. So that's about 20% of the national government budget for 2022, or about 4% of GDP. Okay, and this is not peanuts. Malaking impact din po ito pag nagastos po ito lahat. Kasi prior to 2010, the average infrastructure spending for 2 decades was just about 2-3% of GDP. So imagine if local governments are able to really spend the budgets that and their mandates that they're allocated for. It will really contribute a lot to economic growth, local growth for sure, and development, and help the economy outgrow debt. Okay. Now, what was done in 2022, as we all know, is to recover fiscal space, is to reduce the support to LGUs of national government programs and prioritize poor LGUs. Si ASEC Alampaya yesterday of the DPWH, Eric, I think, was the one who discussed how they scaled down the basic infrastructure programs for 2022 in compliance with the NBM budget call of 2022, that assistance to local governments should only be for the poorer local government units. ASEC Eric explained that what remained, okay, my computations was there was a 60% reduction of the NEP with respect to basic infrastructure projects at the DPWH. But when this left Congress, it increased, of course. It became about just a 50% reduction. But in any case, ASEC Eric mentioned it yesterday that they were funding ongoing and continuing projects. And they anticipate that in 2024, this might be discontinued. Okay. Now, overall, the implication when we take a look at the by sector, so when we do by sector analysis at the national government level, it allocates a proportion of the subsidy to LGUs to each of the services sectors. So social service, economic service, and that. Now, by sector, there were across the board increases to the subsidy of LGUs because of the implementation of the Mandanas Supreme Court ruling. But these were accommodated by decreases in the shares of. So I look at the shares, not so much the nominal values, because the shares will show the prioritization of the different spending priorities. So in the case of social services, education services, though it still received the largest, it shrunk. Okay, so it shrunk. Now, for social services, another sector that increased actually here was social welfare spending. So nag-spike dito ang spending for 4Ps. Okay, so that's a good thing. So as you can see, the prioritization in the budget was infrastructure, social services for 2022, and as well as implementing the Mandanas Supreme Court ruling. Now, in the case of economic services, okay, all of the other subsectors shrunk. Okay, so nag-shrink din po siya, just to give way to the subsidy for LGUs. Now, here, this graph shows you LGU expenditures and revenues in percent of GDP. So what I mentioned earlier was that expenditures to GDP was 4%. Okay, 4% on the average. And that's what it'll be. But it spiked now this year, so malaki yung contribution. Now, in the case of local revenues to GDP, it's not as much. Okay, of course, because we know that local governments are more dependent actually on external sources of income, which would be your transfers. Okay. Now, how can we improve? Okay, how can we improve the collaboration between the national and local government units? Okay, so this diagram actually is a result of another discussion paper of mine, okay, which talks about, it assesses the national and local government planning and development planning and budgeting process. Okay, so as you can see here, the way to understand this would actually be that, sorry about that. The way to understand this would be that we are anchored on Ambition Natin 2020, okay? And under that, there's this Philippine Development Plan, which will now be revised this year. NED is already beginning the groundwork, I think, waiting for the new administration. Then there would be the Public Investment Program that shows the priorities of different sectors contributing to the Philippine Development Plan. And here you would have a list of infrastructure investments as well under the Public Investment Program. And this is updated every year, actually, at the climate level. But every 3 years, there's a midterm review here. Now, the important thing is that if you look at the columns, it shows here how national and local government units can collaborate. Okay, and at the bottom would be municipal, and this would be perhaps component city development plans. Actually, should be ideally aligned with provincial development plans. Should figure into the regional development plan. Should figure in and be aligned with the Philippine Development Plan. And the same thing for the case of the LDIP, no? So the LDIP here should be able to, be included ideally in the provincial development investment programs. And I heard from the first day that there were some LGUs here at the municipal level sharing that some of the barangays did not actually really share their development plans or wanted to cooperate, and that's common. I've heard that story in my researches. So this is something that can be improved upon. So here, this provincial development investment program should actually be able to contribute to the regional investment program as well as public investment programs. And that's for the development planning and investment programming. And we know all that this is actually medium term. So 5 years to, no? 3 years sa local level, 6 years yung development plan, 3 years yung LDIP. But at the national level, it's per administration. So this would be 5 years. Okay. Now the challenge is always, since you have a 5-year plan or a 3-year plan, how do you prioritize this to get into the annual budget? Yun ang pinagkaiba. We have a 5-year plan, but we only have an annual budget. So that's where the role of prioritization comes in. So therefore, you have your annual investment program. And then ideally, it should be able to also contribute to the provincial investment program. Or if not so, you can perhaps also go to the Regional Development Council to ask for funds. And prior to the implementation of the Mandanas ruling, the trend would be for municipalities to go also directly to national government agencies to ask for funding. And that's how it would be. And then you would come out with your municipal budget. Now, there have been current efforts which Director Anna already shared. Like in the case of, let's say for this one, the link between provincial and regional plans. Okay, so there was this PDP localization effort that was instituted in 2017, but practiced in 2018 and 2019. And some of you from the provincial offices here would actually know of this. And the ILG asked me to conduct a study. The discussion paper came out last year about this exercise. So the exercise, I'll be discussing it a bit more in detail later on, though those we interviewed at the provincial development planning officers, they said that of course it did add to their work, but they saw the importance of it, especially in monitoring and evaluating progress at their provincial level. Now, this is something that could be improved upon in terms of collaboration, as well as the two arrows here are pointing to the improved link between getting municipal development plans into provincial development plans, as well as investment programs. And I think it was Mayor Lagman Luistro yesterday who mentioned that really it's important to have inter-area cooperation, especially if you are one of the, in the poorer regions, or if you have limited resources and want to pool resources to provide services that actually spill over boundaries. So that's a nice innovation in that sense. Now, just a brief discussion of the study on the PDP localization efforts, and also the devolution transition plans that I've been hearing about, and which actually I will be examining for this year and next year. So asahan niyo po, interviewing ko din po kayo next year. We're going to be vetting and verifying and doing a baseline study on the devolution transition plans. Now, in 2017, the DILG NEDA introduced the policy of drafting results matrices at the provincial level as an instrument or mechanism to enable and approximate the extent of alignment of local development investment programs to the PDP RMs and sustainable development goals. Now, I'll speak about this in more detail later on. Pero as I mentioned earlier, maganda po yung reception, even if it entailed a bit more work. If it could be streamlined into the development planning process, maganda po yung reception nito, because this actually, they didn't perceive this as encroaching their fiscal autonomy. When we assessed, I'll show you later what it looks like. When we assessed the data, we came out with a profile and indicators, and it showed really what the regional priorities were and the provincial priorities were with respect to the PDP. So it showed where the LGUs could contribute and where the national government oversight agencies could help out, especially if there would be, assistance funds or equalization funds to help out the poorer LGUs in this. So yun po yung kinaganda ng exercise na to, and I'm happy to hear that the DILG will be continuing this effort. But at the same time, while we heard yesterday that national government agencies are preparing for strengthened devolution and oversight with the Mandanas ruling, both the PDP localization efforts and the devolution transition plans can help guide and improve cooperation and coordination across the different levels of LGU. So this is just to show the exercise. Now I won't go into it. So the PDP is supposed to find itself into the results matrices, and then the results matrices and the PDP will be now regionalized. Okay, so ang ginawa to the next link to the provincial level. Now this is just an example of one of the drafted PDP results matrices of a province. Okay, so parang what they do is they go through the shopping list of indicators in the PDP results matrix, and they identify which really applies to them, which is their priority, where do they want to work on. And this would be under the different chapters. So there are 17 chapters, if I'm not mistaken, of the PDP, 20 chapters of the PDP. So they would identify which of the indicators under the specific chapters. And you can see, so we came out with summaries. Across the board, most regions prioritized agri, but there were some regions that prioritized chapter 20, which would be, or 19, which would be both infrastructure and the environment, sustainability. Some, the NCR, I remember, prioritized governance. So yun yung kinaganda nun. Parang it's easier for national government oversight policymakers to identify where assistance is needed for certain areas in the PDP. Okay. Now on to the second part of my presentation on the role of innovation in governance. So innovation in governance is not just about technology. It's even thinking of new processes or ways to do things. This is considered as innovation. And information, just simply, I recently also helped UNICEF draft an operations manual for BARM for social protection programs, just mainly, changing the form to make it easier to share information or make it easier to identify. That's already an innovation in itself because it will make the delivery of public services easier, simpler. Information also should be seen as an innovation in institutional reforms. So I am very much so for providing information and sharing data and all this. And I think that the CBMS, especially because of the mandate now of the CBMS Act, should be utilized to the maximum. Okay. So this is the community-based monitoring system. Okay, CBMS for identifying programs. Of course, one of our studies showed, though, we did a nationwide survey of development planning practices. I'm sure yung iba po sa inyo na interview namin, mga MPDO po ang in-interview namin nun eh. So, in that survey, we found that majority of the planning officers really use the CBMS to identify gaps from the vision to the current status of the locality, the LGU. So doon nakita, this is more so than the other DILG prescribed rapids and the LDIS system. They use CBMS more. So naalala ko rin, may in-interview din po ako, nagsalita po siya. I think yung taga Carmona po yata yan, na very proud na they have a well-developed CBMS program and they really spend on this. So yun po, it's really important in identifying investment programs. It's really important in emergency response. I think this is one of the reasons behind, if you look at our discussion paper on, when COVID just happened, the APPC in 2020 on innovating governance, the lack of consolidated and updated information of the poor and vulnerable in localities and the long process it took to vet kung sinong eligible for SAP was one of the reasons for the delay. So which is why now is the opportune time, having that experience, we should really develop our information systems for emergency response and more importantly also for monitoring and evaluation. Nakakatuwa rin po. I heard some comments and and related questions from the participants then with regard to the need to, the want to strengthening monitoring and evaluation. So I think also that's part of the CBMS mandate. Kasama din po yun. Parang one of the section there also prioritizes this. As well as I think the capacity development programs that was mentioned by Director Anna that would be established by the LGA to help prime for full devolution. Now, innovations and systems also are innovations like inter-LGU cooperation or higher levels of local governments. And I know that, well, from anecdotes, that sometimes inter-LGU cooperation is a bit challenging, but when it's possible, like in the case of Tobacco City, then it's good to capitalize this, especially if we have limited resources. Now, smart systems also, I'll give examples later that tap digitalization. Now, what are institutional innovations? So, well, this is from a former lecture, but institutions are generally the foundation rules of the game, okay, according to institutional theory. The foundation for governance, the play of the game, okay? So you need the institutions there in order to be able to govern, okay? And part of this, part of the institutional innovations that I am, advocating for is information, data transparency, and data sharing, okay? There's a need to improve databases, as I shared earlier, and encourage data sharing and transparency, as well as information campaigns. So napaka-importante po nito. Kaya nung sinabi ni ASEC Eric from the DPWH na he will share all of the information on infrastructure, I took note of that. And, being a researcher myself, I really want to take advantage of that opportunity. Now, second, strengthening and establishing both short and long-term responses to public health issues. So ito, again, this this part of my lecture was part of the APPC 2020 on innovating governance, assessing the response to COVID-19 in its first year, 2020. So from there, we learned from other countries that have experienced SARS and MERS. They already had contingency plans or systems in place for when there's such emergencies happen. So now that we experience, like my example earlier, yung mobilizing the birth COVID-19 response. Now we know and we can innovate and have these in place for hopefully this something like this would not happen again. But in the event that such an emergency might happen again, we are more or less guided by these systems or contingency plans, no? As well as innovating service delivery. So for this, I learned of some examples of local governments that tapped, as I mentioned earlier, financial service providers to be able to distribute ayuda, okay, or the assistance. So they will explore easier ways to deliver the goods and services that they want to deliver. Now on smart systems, okay, so these are just examples of smart systems. I think perhaps Congressman Secretary Sarmiento might have better examples, but the few examples that we were able to include in our report were on Makati City. So the Makati Citizen app was launched in 2017. So it uses an integrated technology to improve the city's disaster preparedness and communications. So this proved to be very vital and beneficial in the delivery of services during the pandemic. Davao City also, there were innovations in the field of safety and security by establishing the Security Command Center, which gave public advisories, as well as information on earthquake and tsunami warnings. And it utilized digitalization with modern IT applications, and it used technological tools such as surveillance systems and real-time data which mapped out GIS. So importante din po itong governance in geographical information systems. So this is also important. Data and information also obtained from its central 911 operations would help facilitate the timely deployment of responders. And this is also linked to the Interpol 24/7 database to the Philippine Center on Transnational Crime, allowing the city to appropriately appraise and respond to international threats. So there are examples, and I'm sure you've had your own innovations as well during this past 2 years. I myself learned a lot as well, how to adjust and shift, especially with the work from home structure. Now, how can LGUs be partners in national development? And this would be through improved, adaptive, agile, innovative local governance. And I'd like to highlight 4 specific points which came out as a result of several of our studies at PIDS. So this is basically a summary of all of the studies we've conducted. First, there's a need to improve strategic fund utilization. Second, there's a need to encourage enhanced revenue mobilization. Third, there's a need to have clearly targeted national government assistance programs, if there are. Okay, so I will rephrase this. Only if the national government decides to maintain assistance programs to LGUs, these should be clearly targeted and have clear objectives. Okay, and there should be institutional reforms. First, on strategic fund utilization. Through strategic fund, this could be done through strengthened identification and prioritization of investment programs. And to the extent possible, encourage investments across LGUs for goods and services that have spillover effects, such as in the case of local water service delivery. Okay, so in 2018, though this is updated, Director Anna informed me, when we did our survey, census actually of all municipalities, only 40% of the municipalities at the time had updated comprehensive development plans. And only 31% had valid local development investment programs. And only half of these prepared project briefs for these. So this has impact with respect to strategic fund utilization, because it would also entail, ensuring that LGUs spend on the prioritized investment programs. So evidence showed in a COA 2017 report, I haven't checked the most recent one yet, municipalities, no, this is all LGUs rather. All LGUs spent an average of only about 76% of the mandated local development fund, which is 20% of the annual ERA, which will be larger with your NATA this year in 2022. So the unspent amount represents an opportunity cost to the economy. If this amount were to be spent, it could have contributed to the fiscal multiplier that I discussed earlier and contributed to increased incomes, local incomes, and economic growth. The LDF would be the main source of infrastructure spending if NG-LGU support programs are discontinued or reduced, which from yesterday's presentation of ASEC, we should be expecting. Okay, it's already been reduced, the basic infrastructure program. Now, for example, a PID study estimated a 167 billion fiscal gap for municipal roads, rural health units, and evacuation centers for existing infrastructure in 2017. So if the national government will be discontinuing these programs, it would be local governments that have to take on this mandate. And um, as you will see in the next slide, no, I did a quick number crunching. I examined the ending balances of local government units for the provinces, cities, and municipal levels. So this is in thousand pesos from 2009 to 2020. And you see here, hardly is there ever an LGU with respect to the SRE. So ang data source ko nito would be the SRE. That is in the negative. They always have positive ending balances. Larger so for the cities. For the provinces, yes, but for the provinces would have lower ending balances than the municipalities typically. Now I compared this. If you take a look at this with the 20% ERA or mandated funds, so I looked at what is the ending balance with respect to the 20% ERA, and you can see it's in the 1,000%. Okay, so ang ibig sabihin lang po nito, merong mga unspent balances that could have been used to help stimulate the local economy. Sa national government level, if an agency is not able to spend its budget for a specific year fully, we lament because there's low budget utilization rate. Why? Because this delays the impact of the desired programs and projects of the national government. Nagkakaroon ng lag effect. And it's an opportunity cost because it can all contribute to the economy. Government, when it spends in the economy, it creates a multiplier effect. And that's why the hope is that we can find solutions to improve the utilization rates, especially with respect to the local development fund. Now here I examine the capital outlays for these years and I compare it with respect to 20% of ERA that was received in that year. And as you can see here, for cities, they're above 100%, which means that they fulfill their mandate. But when you take a look at provinces and municipalities, it's less than 80%. On the average, it's about 75% of their mandated 20% of ERA that they're spending. And again, as I mentioned, this represents a huge opportunity cost because this can contribute to local incomes and local economic recovery and help at the local level. Also, it would improve revenues, business revenue collections at the local level, and would help improve, make it more attractive for businesses to invest. So this is just a food for thought with respect to fulfilling the mandate and better strategic utilization of funding. And this is very important because, as I mentioned earlier, if we want to be able to outgrow our national debt at the soonest possible time, all aspects of government have to do their part as well. They all have a role, and proudly so. Okay. Now, the second aspect I'd like to highlight here would be enhanced local revenue mobilization. Since LGUs have long been dependent on the NATA, averaging about 66% of regular local income in the past decade, it's important to pass the real property valuation bill to provide additional funds in local service delivery. Though I don't know if this would be, done with this administration. I hope it's carried on in the next Congress. Another option would be to engage in the private sector through PPPs, or for revenue mobilization, have inter-area cooperation, as Mayor Luistra mentioned yesterday, pool resources to provide goods and services that spill over boundaries. Okay. Now, if local government assistance programs are continued, these must be clearly targeted. Okay. So another one of our studies at PIDS showed that some NG programs, which were mandated to prioritize poor LGUs, showed weak at best moderate association between regional poverty incidents and expenditure allocations. So anong programs to? Meron pong program ang sabi niya, it's really directed towards the poorer. But when we looked at the incidence of spending, by region, it wasn't in the necessarily the largest share didn't necessarily go to the poorer areas. Now, with respect to the need, it was supposed to fill the gap in water systems. It didn't necessarily go to the LGUs that had fewer or had levels 1 and 2 water systems. So that's what I mean by the growth equity fund. It should be better targeted, clearly defined objectives, and it also should be time bound. Okay. Now, in order to also avoid duplicative efforts with spending, the Growth Equity Fund and any other LGU assistance program by national government agencies should be aligned with the programs under other laws that prioritize poor LGUs, which is this SGLG Act and the CBMS Act. They both have provisions to provide capacity building and technical assistance to LGUs from the fifth and sixth class municipalities. So, para to strategically spend, and to avoid duplication of spending. These should be aligned across the board. Now, finally, for the need for institutional reforms, there should be improved coordination and alignment of devolved goods and services that spill over boundaries. There's a need to review oversight regulatory mandates and streamline implementation to address overlaps and ambiguities. And this is evident in one of the recently published articles I co-authored also in the Philippine Journal of Development, which looked at local water supply governance. And the article found that ambiguous and overlapping regulatory mandates of oversight bodies resulted in fragmented and at times duplicative water supply interventions. And sayang po kapag duplicative yung spending. It could be used elsewhere or if the money is unspent itself. Now, last, moving forward as innovative partners in national development. For local economic growth and development, there's a need for improved strategic fund utilization and revenue mobilization. How to do this? We should enhance the technical capacities of local officials for development planning and investment program. And we heard the programs and the plans of the two national government agencies yesterday, as well as the commitment of the DILG, DBM, NEDA, as oversight bodies to LGUs with respect to their capacity building programs to be done under the LGA. So kasama din po yun. To make an impact on local development outcomes, these must be implemented. So the local development investment plans and investment programs and development plans must be implemented and monitored to make an impact. The money has to be spent. So we should spend as mandated, especially with respect to the local development fund. And there should be institutional reforms, which I mentioned earlier, with regard to, let's say, local water supply. And perhaps energy, though I'm not too familiar with that particular aspect. And we should also, at the local government level, you could possibly also tap the private sector or other local governments for assistance. Now, for NG, LGU programs that are continued, this must be better designated, targeted, and time-bound. Okay, so that ends my presentation. These are my references. And thank you very much for your time.
At this point, we would like to open the floor for questions from our participants. You may type in your questions in the chat box or use the raise hand feature of the app. Again, I encourage everyone in the Zoom meeting to please key in your questions. Also, for those who are viewing us live via Facebook page of CFG LGDO. thank you so much. We received one question from I'm Miss Mildred is raising her hand. Miss Mildred.
Ay,
Hi, good afternoon, Miss Mildred. I know you. Kilala ko po kayo. Kamusta po?
naalala niyo ako. Okay lang po.
Opo.
Natutuwa ako kasi binanggit niyo yung CBMS. Alam niyo namang advocate ako ng CBMS talaga. Ever since, na maganda po yung diniscuss niyo na talagang ang resources natin, kahit anong laki ng resources natin mapapano naman. Wala tayong magandang database. Hindi natin matatarget ng items. Kasi doon natin malalaman talaga kung ano pa talaga ang dapat. Eksakto. Kung reliable database, yung most important. Sad thing nga kasi ngayon ay PMS na to parang mas lalong kumunti. Dati marami pong nag-a-avail ng ngayon po ay medyo kumaunti. Kasi yun nga pong requirement sa uh, kailangan ganitong karami ang ating gadget. Eh, dumami yung gadget kasi considering the time frame ng pag-collect is very short. So, mas malaki yung gagastusin at mas maraming tao ang gagamitin in a very short time. That's why, nung sinabi sa akin ng mga kasama ko na budget kami kasi talagang ginayakan ko naman na i-business kasi kayo para ma-utilize ng ayos yung ating pondo. At kapaganda yan sa plan. Ang nangyari nga po, yun ang nagiging problema. Gusto nila, yung dating gastos mo na magkano lang, tataas kasi magkano isang gadget, magkano isang tablet po. Eh kung in a matter of 2 months, kung magdadagdag ka ng enumerators for that para makatapos mo na 8 months. Samantalang noon, we have it, let's say, 4 months, tatapos natin. So, pwede natin i-reduce. That's why may letter po ako sa PIDS, sa PSA na can you consider na habaan natin ng konti yung time, hindi naman magiging obsolete yung data. If you, instead of 2 months, gawin natin 4 months. Actually, dati it was 6 months, no? Kung 4 months, mahahati po yung required na gastos. Instead na, let's say, 100 yung gadgets, pwede natin gawin 50. Then, instead na 100 yung enumerators, pwede ng 50. Lesser ang expenses. In, yung months ay kung madagdagan man, hindi naman ma-obsolete ang ating yung data. That's why, yun po yung iniintay kong sagot noon pa kasi sabi ko sa mga kasama ko, ba't maayaw nyo? Maganda naman. O nga, nag-start na tayo. Nag-start na sila. So, talagang nag-start na. Gusto nilang ituloy, hindi nila maituloy. Kasi mas malaki yung gastos ngayon. Totoo po. Pero, kaya nung tumulat ako, being of the league, president of the league, sabi ko, baka pwedeng bawasan natin yung, dagdagan natin yung time para mabawasan natin yung resources na gagamitin para madagdagan din yung mag-a-avail ng yung CBMS. Actually, CBMS is very good talaga. I'm proud talaga ako dito sa CBMS. Totoo yun, ma'am. Yung sabi ko ng pana, sabi tayo nakakausapin ko talaga. Pinagmamalaki ko. Diba?
Thank you, Ma'am Mildred. Medyo choppy lang po yung dating niya, pero naintindihan ko yung sinasabi niya na parang to find ways to be able to work out the CBMS para ma-cover yung gastos. And you're right, no? Hindi naman magiging obsolete din agad yung data. Like in the case of at a larger scale, no, yung listahanan, hindi ba? That's done every so often for the 4P. So ganun din po. That's a good suggestion po yung sinusuggest niya na parang gawa ng paraan. That's an innovation in itself. I just don't know kung ano yung legalities, kung if you have to have permission or something from a higher level or from oversight. Pero I think you're sharing that with your colleagues also is very important. So salamat din and uh, more power. Ayan. Mag-i-interview din po kami ulit next year. Devolution transition plans naman po. Asahan niyo po kami. Thank you po.
Thank you so much, Miss Mildred. Now may we call in the one who's raising her hand, Miss Armida. Hi ma'am, good afternoon po from Aurora Province.
Yes po, good afternoon. And good afternoon to Dr. Sikat. Actually, her presentation ay very timely. No? Lalo na po in line with this devolution. No? So thank you, ma'am. Anyway, for the community-based monitoring system, I agree that this is one of the, actually this is the major source of data namin. Kaya lang, we have this limitation, lalo na with this PSA. So siguro ma'am, as part of my additional recommendation, although you recommended a lot, there is so much strategies no, na nakikita ko talaga na very applicable sa aming mga local government unit. Siguro let's look at the current role of the province in this CBMS because ang kamawalan po ni PSA is the municipality. Actually, the province of Aurora provided fund for the implementation of CBMS province-wide. Unfortunately, we do not know paano po kami makakapasok with the memorandum of agreement with PSA. So I hope there will be a way to expand no the role of province pagdating po dito sa ating CBMS. So yun ma'am yung aking of course syempre being the provincial nasa province, we have this not only the supervisory but of course the fiscal augmentation doon sa ating pong mga lower local government unit. And then with the smart system ma'am, napakaganda din po yung tating digitalization kasi ito na talaga yung demand. No, this is the new normal and we really need this. Kaya lang ang napapansin natin sa mga local government units, lahat po kami, iba-iba po ang aming mga source. Except of course yung binababa halimbawa ng Bureau of ng ating Department of Finance, ng ating Department of Budget and Management, they have their own system. Pero yung iba po like paano mag-process ng ating license, yung iba't ibang sa real property tax, yung iba-iba pa pong mga system. Minsan ang mga LGUs, kanya-kanya po kami ng source. So dapat the National Government Agency, sana po ito yung ating i-augment, the systems augmentation. Bawat office, like halimbawa, pagdating sa disaster, sa Office of Civil Defense, siya na yung magbaba mismo sa LGU. This is the system that you need. Ito yung technical capacity. Sana po with this devolution, isabay natin yung sistema, yung computerization and digitalization. Na hindi na kami maghahanap sino ba yung pwedeng magbigay sa amin ng system na to. Sana po may ganon. Kasi malaking tulong po ito doon sa ating mga local government units. That's all lang, ma'am. Thank you po sa ating host. Thank you again, Dr. Sigat.
Okay. Thank you to Dr. Nakita ko Dr. Palispis ka rin. Kay Governor Kua, under Governor Kua, yeah. Okay, so he's been a co-pastor of mine for several years. Unstable? Hello?
Yes, ma'am. Just a bit unstable lang po nung simula ng inyong sentence, ma'am.
Sige, I'll turn off my video first, but I'm still here. Is this okay? Better?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yes. So I'm glad that you highlighted yung importance of provincial oversight. It's also something I highlighted in my presentation kasi nakita ko rin po yun when we did our study on PDP localization efforts. Yung ibang provincial governments naman ang sabi, minsan hindi nagko-contribute din yung municipalities kahit humihingi sila ng contribution to the what to prioritize or how to engage in the results matrix or kung to submit lang, parang ano yung mga indicators sa PDP ang relevant sa inyo. And I understand kasi alam ko at the local government level, medyo flat yung organization nyo. Minsan yung planning officer siyang engineer, siyang budget officer or something like that. So I do understand that also. Pero nakakatuwa yung mga na-interview namin kasi they really appreciate that effort kasi makakatulong moving forward. And so thank you for that. I don't know how to work that out. Yung I think siguro bring it up to the oversight agencies, PSA or DILG. Pero may forum din ako next week sa PIDS. You all might want to attend also, no, about fiscal viabilities of local governments. But Pero may makakasama kung DILG, baka mabanggit din po natin doon. Now, yung with regard to the capacity building, I think also that's very important. And siguro kung sana ma-document din or nasabi din to kay si Director Ana kasi they're now really preparing capacity building programs. Yung sa CBMS, alam ko, meron din siya part of the, well, in the law there should be assistance to poorer LGUs, but perhaps it could be examined how this could be expanded as well, for the others. And I really appreciate, engaging with those who really do the groundwork, kayong mga development planning officers. Kasi even in national government, sinasabi ko, it's really the executives and middle managers who really know their job and want to make that effort and try to improve it. It's just, it's just really communications that's important. So thank you for that.
So much too for that question, Ms. Armida. Now we have two questions po, Dr. Sikat. One from Oriental Mindoro from their planning officer as well, Ms. Sofia Alexandra Logmao. Ma'am, would you like to ask the question po directly to Dr. Sikat? All right? Or I just read na lang po the question. Dr. Sikat, given daw po that the average fund utilization rate of provinces is about 70%, is there a projected average rate on fund utilization rate of LGUs given that additional funding will be downloaded to provinces? Thank you daw po.
Okay, thank you. Thank you po, Ma'am Sophia. Is that right? From Oriental Mindoro. Actually, taga Mindoro, my grandparents from Mindoro. But in any case, um, wala pa ho kaming projections. It really would depend on the provinces and if they and how they would spend. Because the figures that I showed was just based on the balances from your SREs. So kinompile ko po lahat ng mga SREs by province, city, municipal levels, aggregate, and total. And that's what I found. I found that based on the ending balances, hindi merong ending balances. There's still an amount that could be spent for that particular year. And when I compared it with respect to the mandate of the local development fund, kunyari, magkano po yung inalot on the aggregate ng provinces for capital outlays? Okay, is it equivalent to 20% of ERA for that year? And it showed no. Kulang po siya sa 20% ng ERA for that year. And I know that the reason might differ across the different LGUs, but it's just at the aggregate. This just represents an opportunity cost. If this money could have been spent, it could have pump prime stimulated the economy and contributed to local economic growth and development. So nasa sa inyo po yan. Siguro yung next administration, i-push nyo po na i-spend that local development fund. Thank you.
With that, we acknowledge din po yung technical difficulties ni Ms. Sofia. That's why hindi niya daw po ma-open yung kanyang microphone. Now we have another question po. You mentioned that LGUs should have enhanced technical capacities of local officials for development planning and investment programming. Can you provide daw po concrete examples?
Okay. The DILG actually discussed this nung Tuesday rather. Si Director Ana Bonagua, she mentioned that they're already preparing with the local government academy, different capacity building programs, depending on she has this 4-quadrant classification of LGUs, those who need a lot of help in the lower quadrant, those who can do well on their own. So parang they'll be prioritizing all of the ones who need more assistance there. So those would be the capacity building programs that they are developing. I'm not privy to which kinds yet, but I'm sure development planning and investment programming is part of it. I heard it's part of it. I think also DPWH mentioned yesterday that there would be also capacity, they're willing to contribute to the capacity development program with respect to project assessment and all that. And I think this is very, very important also with respect to spending on capital outlay and it being able to contribute to economic local growth, no? Because what we saw in our nationwide survey of municipalities in development planning processes is that one of the recommendations of the DILG process is that these project briefs should be prepared for all. And what we observed was that 50%, only 50% of the LGUs, the municipalities we surveyed, claimed to say that they have project briefs. Now, ano bang halaga ng project brief na yun? And I hope that the DPWH will help or train local government officials to be able to draft project briefs. If you want to implement, let's say, construct a road for next year, okay, and you didn't really study, and then you say, oh, it'll be built in this area. What if that area is actually the ground is not stable or not? That would cause a delay in the implementation of that project. Whereas if that project that you're planning to implement were already researched, may feasibility study project brief na siya ahead of time, the year before you implement it, then that would be better because come that year, you'll just have to spend on it and implement it. So that's the importance also of preparing ahead of time. And I'm sure kayo po mga planners, you would know the importance of this also. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Dr.
Uh-huh.
Sikat. And actually, we in the AP is actually interested about the forum that you have mentioned earlier. So we will keep in touch. We will ask you about it later na lang po siguro.
Okay.
All right, so the next question we have here, ma'am, is from Isabella. Mr. Noel Manuel Lopez, would you like to raise the question po directly to Dr. Sikat? Sir?
Hello.
Right. Good
Hello
afternoon,
po.
sir.
Good
Good
afternoon.
afternoon. Good afternoon, ma'am. This is actually not a question. A while ago, you said that, well, you showed the graph showing that there are balances as far as provinces is concerned. And then you mentioned also that the development funds of provinces is less than 20%. That is actually not true because the segregation of the EDF or the Economic Development Fund is statutorily provided. So lahat ng provinces actually have segregated at least 20% of their annual budget for Economic Development Fund. It must be stressed that EDF balances must be stressed also that EDF balances are actually continuing, meaning minsan may mga balanse talaga for projects that are being implemented. Hindi naman talaga January pinabidyan tapos December natatapos na nababayaran kaagad. Sometimes it overlaps to succeeding years. Ang problema talaga as far as LGUs is concerned, as I see it, is yung napakahaba talaga na proseso na minamandate ng Republic Act 9184. Actually, that's the reason for us, provinces, kaya nagkakaroon talaga ng balances at the end of the year. But when you pay the contractors, for example, for infrastructure projects under EDF, in the succeeding year, nauubos naman talaga. Kaya lang, meron na namang balances because there's another year of EDF again. Annually naman merong 20% na nasa-segregate. So I strongly believe na if there is a way to reduce yung balances as far as the provinces are concerned para magamit yung funds, igsian sana. There should be an amendment to Republic Act 9184. Igsian talaga yung proseso ng procurement. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much for that information and that insight as well. We've heard anecdotes also na it's really part yung iba procurement process na that causes the delay in the implementation. And my estimate of the capital outlay to 20% of ERA didn't mean to say na hindi naman sila segregate. I understand segregated in 20%. It was more of just to show na sometimes hindi na suspend yung entire earmarked 20% amount of the development fund. Wala yung actual audited reports with me, but it was just to give an approximation of what it would look like. And I also understand yung that the payment would also happen in succeeding years. Pero yun, baka in the future I really plan to identify the additional bottlenecks, and we can learn more about this from interviews with you. So thank you.
Sir Noel. Now we have another participant po from Gamay Northern Summer, Sir Mark Anthony. Michael Anthony, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Hello. Hello, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Yes, sir. Good
Yes,
afternoon.
ma'am. Good afternoon. Siguro, sir, yung tinutukoy po ni Ma'am Justin kasi yung kasi kasi na-report din yan sa amin ng BLGF. Yung sabi ng BLGF na kaya hindi umabot sa 20% kasi yung binudget lang natin 20%, dadaan pa sa procurement. 'Di ba? Ano, yung
The infrastructure in the next couple of years, it would really be important to strengthen this particular area to make economic growth local, national, sustainable. So I think that's the point of the matter. So thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Our participants, thank you for your questions. Insights and additional information. Send this certificate to you as a sign of our appreciation for your time for being us today. Right. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
If I may request, ma'am, if the team can ask for a photo picture with you among with the participants.
Okay, sure.
All right, so let's have that opportunity right now. So may I invite everyone in this Zoom link to please open your cameras. We are actually 200 participants in this Zooming meeting link. So we
Wow.
have 9 frames.
Thank you.
As we always do, let's smile from first to ninth frame. Okay? In 3, 2, 1, first frame. All right. Second frame. In 3, 2, 1. Third frame. In 3, 2, 1. Fourth frame. 3, 2, 1. Alright. Now, fifth frame. In 3, 2, 1. Okay, sixth frame. In 3, 2, 1. Seventh frame. In 3, 2, 1. And now down to the last frame. In 3, 2, 1. Again, thank you so much, everyone. I hope you had your most beautiful smiles. And together with, of course, our very beautiful RP, resource person for this afternoon.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, so at this time, it's already, it's 2:31. We will have a 10-minute short break. For when we come back, we will have Mr. Melcinen Sarmiento, a former secretary of the DILG, as our next resource person. So take a quick break and we'll have to resume at 2:40. All right, so see you everyone at 2:40 for our second session for today's activity.
Local Government Executives and Managers class, a training program which aims to strengthen the capabilities of local government leaders so they may excel in their roles and performance of mandated functions, centered on three learning areas: development and governance, strategic public management, personal efficacy and leadership. The Local Government Executives and Managers class. Join the program now. Local Government Executives and Managers class, a training program which aims to strengthen the capabilities of local government leaders so they may excel in their roles and performance of mandated functions, centered on three learning areas: development and governance, strategic public management, personal efficacy and leadership. The Local Government Executives and Managers class. Join the program now. Local Government Executives and Managers class, a training program which aims to strengthen the capabilities of local government leaders so they may excel in their roles and performance of mandated functions, centered on three learning areas: development and governance, strategic public management, personal efficacy and leadership. The Local Government Executives and Managers class. Join the program now. Local Government Executives and Managers class, a training program which aims to strengthen the capabilities of local government leaders so they may excel in their roles and performance of mandated functions, centered on three learning areas: development and governance, strategic public management, personal efficacy and leadership. The Local Government Executives and Managers class. Join the program now. Local Government Executives and Managers class, a training program which aims to strengthen the capabilities of local government leaders so they may excel in their roles and performance of mandated functions, centered on three learning areas: development and governance, strategic public management, personal efficacy and leadership. The Local Government Executives and Managers class. Join the program now. Local Government Executives and Managers class, a training program which aims to strengthen the capabilities of local government leaders so they may excel in their roles and performance of mandated functions, centered on three learning areas: development and governance, strategic public management, personal efficacy and leadership. The Local Government Executives and Managers class. Join the program now.
The LGMC centers on building the capabilities of local government leaders and the expected roles and functions of local government units as provided by the Local Government Code. The program targets department heads or its equivalent in the local government unit, including those in charge of critical local government functions with permanent positions in good health and age 50 years old and below. Details about the program and its requirements may be accessed through the PMDP webpage and also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Inquiries may also be sent through email address at lgemc@dap.edu.ph. Welcome back to the second session of the webinar series today. For our next speaker, we have Mr. Melcinen S. Sarmiento, a member of the House of Representatives representing the 1st Legislative District of Samar from 2010 to 2016. During his time in Congress, Mr. Sarmiento authored the following: an act strengthening the juvenile justice system in the Philippines, amending for the purpose of Republic Act Number 9344, the expanded Anti-Trafficking in Persons Law, expanding RA 9208, the revised Corporation Code of the Philippines, and the National Performing Companies Act. He also headed the House contingent to the Commission on Appointments while sitting as the chairman of the Joint Congressional Oversight Committee on the Automated Election System. Before joining the Legislative Department, Mr. Sarmiento served as the Vice Mayor of Calbayog City from 1992 to 1995 and Mayor from 2001 to 2010. He was also Secretary of the Interior and Local Government during the incumbency of the late President Benigno Aquino III. A true and visionary civil servant, Mr. Sarmiento is a recipient of numerous awards in recognition of his service to the public. including the Order of Lacandula in 2016, the Order of Sikatuna in 2015, the Konrad Adenauer Medal of Excellence in 2007, and the Presidential Medal of Merit. He is a member of the advisory group of parliamentarians of the United Nations International Strategy for Disaster Reduction and the United Nations Development Program Parliamentarians for Climate Justice. Mr. Sarmiento continues to serve the public as the chairman of the Board of Trustees of the SOS Children's Villages Philippines, a private, non-political, non-domination organization that provides long-term family-based care to children in need. He is also one of the subject matter experts and member of the faculty of the Local Government Executives and Managers class under DAP's Public Management Development Program. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Mr. Melcinen Sarmiento. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat.
Good afternoon.
Unang-una, napapasalamat tayo sa imbitasyon na ito. Magandang hapon sa ating mga participants. Bago ng 1987, ay napaka-centralized po ng ating gobyerno. Ang development that's basically focused in Metro Manila. Kaya nagkaroon ng clamor to decentralize the government, and in the nang ipinasa yung 1987 Constitution, dinecentralize na yung gobyerno. Yun ang mandato ng konstitusyon. Kaya ang Kongreso ipinasa noong 1991 ang Local Government Code. Natuwa siyempre ang mga lokal na pamahalaan na hindi na kailangan tumakbo pa sa Maynila sa kanilang pangailangan. Dahil napakahirap talaga nung araw na kahit gamot tatakbo ka pa ng Maynila, napakahirap sa isang alkalde ang kanyang gustong gawin sa kanyang bayan sa napaka-centralized na system ng ating gobyerno. And as I've said, with the passage of the Local Government Code, local governments were very happy having an automatic allocation from the national government in 1991. No? Ako'y naging vice mayor. In 1992, the very first year, the Local Government Code was implemented. Pero bago ako magtuloy, when I was in Congress, we were basically fond of filing a bill that's basically an expenditure. We don't talk much about revenue, forgetting na kahit sa isang bahay, kahit anong plano, pag walang pera ang isang bahay, ang plano ay plano lamang. So napaka-importante pag-usapan din yung finance. No? Napaka-importante yung bahagi sa ating pag-implementa ng iba-ibang mga programa. Nag-ipinasa nga yung local code 1991, na-implement na 92, biglang nabigla yung mga local government, may pondo na. Pero nung panahon na yun, basically ang focus was filling up position, ay konting capacity building from the agencies concerned, na national agency na devolve na yung function sa local government. Basically reactionary ang mga lokal na pamahalaan nung araw, tactical, hindi strategic. Kung anong problema, anong naririnig, yun ang sinasagot. So sa first decade ng local code, naranasan natin ang epekto ng masamang ekonomiya. Nagkaroon ng Asian financial crisis in 1998, 97, 98, 99. At karoon ng epekto ito sa ating what used to be the Internal Revenue Allotment, which is now NATA. No? Nagkaroon ng cash flow problem ang national government. Noong panahon na yun, nagkaroon ng pagbawas ng Internal Revenue Allotment. Hindi ibinigay ang dapat na ibibigay na nakasaad sa batas, 40%. At nagkaroon din ng nalaman ng national government dahil naghihirap na sila sa cash flow nila, na may ilang lokal na pamahalaan na may dapat bayaran sa GSIS, na intercept ito, binawasan So pagtanggap ng local government, may bawas na kasi binayad daw doon sa GSIS. Ito ang naging dahilan, ramdam ng lokal na pamahalaan ang hirap dahil biglang lumiit yung tinatanggap na pondo at ito yung nagtulak na mag-file ng petition before the Supreme Court. No? And eventually, the Supreme Court ruled that the act of the national government in reducing the ERA is unconstitutional. And the only way for the president to reduce the ERA is to declare an unmanageable public sector deficit. Without such declaration, they cannot reduce the ERA. No? In consultation, of course, with the Senate President, the Speaker of the House, and the President of all the leagues, barangay, municipalities, cities, and provinces. And the other case, on the ERA intercept case, sabi rin bawal. Kailangan humingi ng permiso sa lokal na pamahalaan, kailangan magpasa ang sanggunian ng authority muna sa mayor. For the mayor to sign a memorandum of agreement with DBM for DBM to automatically deduct a portion of the ERA. Without such a document, national government cannot deduct. So nanalo yung lokal na pamahalaan sa dalawang kasong ito. Ito'y epekto, ulitin ko, dahil nagkaroon ng Asian financial crisis, nagkaroon ng mahirap na sitwasyon pinansya ang national government. Tapos in 2004, nagsabay-sabay, nag-mature ang ating mga utang. At in 2004, ang ating Pangulo at that time had to declare an unmanageable public, and had to declare a fiscal crisis. No? Dahil 34% ng budget natin noon parang napunta na ng bayad utang. Ang capex natin bumaba na lang sa 8% ng national government. Mas mainam pa sa lokal na pamahalaan, 20% development fund. Ang national government bumaba ng 8%. So, tas marami nito hindi pa na-implementa hanggang SARO lang. Walang notice of cash allotment. So hirap na hirap yung national government, naapektuhan ang ating credit rating, na nakaka-apekto hindi lang sa debt service kundi sa epekto ng interest sa pangangailangan ng ating mga tao, housing loan, car loan, etc. etc. Tapos nakita natin after kasi parang external shock after 10 years from the Asian financial crisis, after 10 years yung US recession naman. Sa US recession, naka-epekto naman ito in 2008, 2009. Tumama ito sa ERA in 2012. Bumaba yung ERA natin in 2012 dahil ito ay koleksyon ng 2009 dahil sa tama ng US recession. Tapos unti-unti tayong naka-recover, gumanda ang economy natin. At if you're going to compare the ERA of 2012 with that of 2018, ang 2018 i-collection po ito ng 2015, nadoble naman siya. Nakita natin ang ganda ng epekto ng ERA, ng ekonomiya sa ERA pag magandang economy. No? Pag masama ang ekonomiya, bumabagsak naman tong ERA. So ito na naman tayo, nagkaroon na naman tayo. After 10 years, may COVID-19 naman. Tapos ngayon, nag-umpisa pa yung gulo sa Ukraine. No? So obserbahan na naman natin ang magiging epekto. Magkakaroon ba ng another external shock o wala. No? So kailangan maobserbahan siya. So ito na naman, natutuwa tayo with the Mandanas-Garcia ruling para sa 2022. Lumaki yung pondo natin but konting ingat. Konting ingat naman tayo dahil alam naman po natin epekto ng pandemya. In 2020, malaki rin po ang binagsak ng koleksyon, both customs and the BIR. So malamang bababa naman yung nata sa 23. No? So kailangan nakaplano to lahat. Ito'y sinasabi ko dahil napaka-importante ito sa lokal na pamahalaan na kailangan pinag-aaralan yung ating, hindi lang yung lokal na yung finance committee, hindi lang yung local situation. Kailangan palagi minomonitor din yung sitwasyon sa national, no? Kung ano nangyayari. Napaka-importante nun. Minomonitor natin ano ba yung debt to GDP ratio, anong GDP growth, collection ng BIR. Mahilig ako nung araw at the end of the year, after 8 or 10 months, I would try to call some friends in the BIR to get hindi pa yung audited na data, most likely ano kaya yung nakolekta nila para nakakapag-project ka kung ilang porsyento yung growth, no, na nakuha nila. So napaka-importante sa lokal na pamahalaan na yung Finance Committee hindi mag-limit sa ano lang, nakaasa lang kung anong internal revenue allotment, anong nakaasa lang kung magkano kaya makokolekta na local revenue, kundi tinitingnan din ang takbo ng ekonomiya sa buong mundo dahil nakaka-apekto yan hindi lang sa internal revenue allotment or sa NATA, kundi nakaka-apekto din sa local economy. Pag maepekto ang ekonomiya at naapektuhan ng local economy, babagsak din ang collection sa business tax. So ulitin ko, napaka-importante, tutukan po ito dahil hindi pwede. Sometimes we're fond of just talking about expenditure. As I've said, we don't talk much about revenue, which is very important. Yun ang dapat nating tingnan, no, sa aspeto ng pinansya. Kasi karamihan sa obserbahan natin, walang forecasting, walang multi-year planning, hindi nagkakaroon ng risk assessment na dapat pinag-aaralan. No? As I've said, after 10 years, it seems to be may external na shock na nangyayari sa ating mundo. So na kailangan pinag-aandaan, no? So isa rin sa nakita natin na yung first decade, yun nga, as I've said, may mga magandang programa, natutuwa tayo, nag-umpisa yung Galing Pook, which I chair now, and pero hindi pa rin tayo masyadong strategic. Nakafocus pa rin tayo doon sa mga proyektong na dapat nating ma-address sa komunidad, no? Napaka-tactical pa rin natin. Can we share siguro yung mga slide na pinanda, no? So noong 2001, after a decade, I told myself when I became mayor in 2001, kailangan maging strategic tayo, no? Andyan na ba yung slide ko? Ewan ko kung napadala sa inyo.
Your presentation, sir?
Yes.
All right, sir. So while waiting for the presentation, may we just know, sir, if we will present, right? We will present your presentation in just a short while, sir.
Yeah, okay. Sige. So napaka-importante, nagkaroon tayo ng strategic plan, no? Na dapat bawat local chief executive at bawat department manager sa mga programang gagawin nila in sync with their vision, no? And napaka-importante na ma-connect din yung vision natin with the national vision. Naobserbahan natin paminsan na kanya-kanya, hindi natin binibigyan ng importansya yung national vision. Ang vision natin 2040. So ang vision natin 2040, 79.2% of our people would want a simple but a comfortable life. So dapat sa national roadmap natin, dapat tugma rin yung roadmap ng bawat lokal na pamahalaan sa buong Pilipinas para nakasintonado tayo. Mahirap naman kung national government, bante, ang governor kaliwa, mayor kanan, kapitan patras, walang mangyayari sa ating bansa, no? Kailangan tugma, no? Napaka-importante na nagkakaisa tayong lahat at isa ang direksyon na ating tinatahak. Napaka-importante rin ng of course, continuity, mag-eleksyon, paminsan yan ang nagiging problema, mga department manager, yan ang sinasabi, baka pagpalit ng isang leader, magkakaroon ng pagbabago sa direksyon, no? Napaka-importante, continuity is something that is very important to all of us. Tapos, kailangan na adapt tayo ng adapt sa present na situation at aking kasi on the Mandanas Garcia ruling, no? Napaka-importante yung this is an opportunity actually to reduce our culture of dependence, no, on national government assistance, especially in 2023, 22, 24. we should not rely much on the national government given the Mandanas-Garcia ruling and their present cash position. I can only imagine the cash flow. As we all know, we have been borrowing money for the past years, no, as dahil sa sitwasyon natin sa pandemya. So napaka-importante na nakukonsider natin yan, yung posisyon ng national government. As I've said, which we experienced in 2004. This is something not new to us. We should learn from the past and adjust, no? At napapaghandaan ito just in case at hindi mahirapan. The advantage again of local governments, because with the Supreme Court decision, it's automatically appropriated and automatically released. Naalala ko nung araw, nadidelay pang sahod ng national government. Nauna ang local kasi nauna yung release sa local. That's the advantage that we should take in local government, no? Napaka-importante niyan na titingnan natin yung aspetong yan. As I've said, it's an opportunity to reduce our dependence with national government and learn to stand up on our own. No? And realistically, it's not the increase also. No? It's how the money will be used. Kahit ano pang laking adjustment yan, kung hindi naman nakaplano kung anong gagastuin dyan, wala namang mangyayari yan. So, kailangan nakaplano talaga. No? My advice, we should also ensure that it will not be used for PS. Dahil mag-ingat tayo, baka sa 23 bumaba, magkakaproblema kayo. No? My advice, wag isagad ang PS cap. Dahil kakaroon ka ng oportunidad, unang-una, may space ka na pwedeng magamit, pwedeng may dagdag sa 20% development fund na nakalagay sa batas, and not less than, ibig say, it can be higher. It's an opportunity also for you to be able to use that savings sa service contracting for certain projects that you would want to implement, na yung programa ay 2, 3, 4 years lang, and you need some experts to help you out, especially in the development of your master plan. No? As we all know, the limitation of our municipal planning office, dapat multidiscipline kasi yan. Napaka-expensive. We're going to hire a group, but of course, whether we like it or not, there's a need for us to do that dahil limited tayo ng tao, ilan lang yung tao doon, no? Para magkaroon talaga ng magandang plano. At ang planong yan dapat tugma rin sa plano ng probinsya, tugma ng plano ng bansa. Napaka-importante nun. At sa akin, oportunidad na makuha itong pondo sa savings doon sa kung hindi natin sasagarin, no? For the meantime. So, and even if a service contract is not part of PS, pero kung ako lang, mas gugustuhin ko doon kukunin sa PS pa rin, kahit hindi siya PS, no? Para hindi maapektuhan yung dapat yung pondong dapat igastos doon sa ibang ano. So again, a roadmap is very important. With the corresponding scorecard, we pioneered the use of the balanced scorecard in 2004. It's now most of the agencies now of government now we do use it already. And of course, in sync siya sa National Roadmap 2040, kahit yung SDGs natin, tugmang-tugma naman sa roadmap ng 2040. Again, the issue of continuity, kailangan ma-plus tayo ito. The process of, kung may bagong leader, the process of reviewing existing programs, how to refine and improve them, what to abandon, based on a cost-benefit analysis, and siyempre titingnan yung socio-economic impact nun, ano? Tapos napaka-importante ma-address yung opportunity ito with that. Narinig ko kanina, digitalization, timeliness of service. No? A good number of people don't really rely much on government, no, for their day-to-day subsistence, but sa mga pangailangan nila, pag-renew, yung mga panahon na yan, kailangan nila mabilis ang serbisyo ng gobyerno. Ang role ng provincial government, yung increase, sana magamit pagsuporta sa mga munisipyo, sa master plan nila, and their core services. Para sa akin, the national government should continue financing the farm-to-market road, because even if you have an ATA of 200 million and mag-increase siya ng 300, your 20% development fund from 40 million is going to be 60 million. Pero a kilometer now of a farm-to-market road, using the DPWH standard, depending on the distance from the highway, mga 20 to 25 million per kilometer. So kahit na nag-60 million ka, 2 kilometro lang yun. Mauubos ang pondo ng lokal. Ay paano yan? Daming pinasang trabaho. This is something that we should all consider. I firmly believe that dapat tuloy pa rin to na national government should continue financing it. No? Kailangan lang legislated yung master plan na gagawin. I-define anong role ng barangay, anong mga proyektong dapat ma-cover ng barangay fund. Municipality, yung focus sa grassroots services, of course, the local economy, municipal infrastructure, the provincial government should take care of connectivity from one town to another. At saka assistance doon sa mga munisipyo sa basic services. No? Sa metropolitan na mga lugar, single plan on drainage, transportation, water, solid waste, cost of ease of doing business, and among other things to attract dagdag na mga kapital sa local economy, sa ekonomiya natin ng ating bansa. Iyan ay mga ilang bagay na dapat nating gawin at sa department manager, bawat programa. This will also address the issue on continuity kasi ika nga pag-justify sa bagong mayor. Normally, tanggal na yan, palitan yan. Pero kung nakaplano ito lahat, ma-explain natin sa bagong mayor, ang presentation nakabase sa problema, pinag-aralan problema, ang output ng pag-aaral, nagkaroon ng prototype and testing ng programa, ng proyekto, nagkaroon ng may klarong implementation plan, at kung nasa implementation phase na, may monitoring and evaluation plan as well, no? Na ito ang tinuturo natin sa LGMC, no? So previous slide siguro. Can we start sa umpisa mismo? Okay, next. Next slide. Yeah, Vice Mayor, I've already shared my experience. No, when I was mayor, we were bankrupt. It was very challenging. Good news sa inyo, may pondo kayo na natanggap. Ako bankrupt. The ERA issue, we had a land problem issue. The Land Management Bureau communicated with the DBM, and the DBM thought that the land area of our city is only so much, when in fact what the Land Management Bureau stated is that as of that time, the area that they have surveyed was only so much. Half of our land area nawala. So I can just imagine, napakalaking problema namin. Tapos these are the two cases that I cited earlier. At doon naman sa dagdag pa, may mga utang akong minana. May 10 months to pay, may 2 years to pay, may 5 years to pay. Because the economy was not doing well, ang pumapalo up to 18% ang interest at that time. You can just imagine. So I had to create the problem in government, sometimes there's a fund, pero ang problema, may cash ba? So yung fund na inasahan namin, hindi dumating because of the land area problem. So talagang I had to create a cash management unit just to manage our cash flow. Naganap ako na may mga empleyadong may background on finance, a small team. I headed the team with 4 other people. Then, tulong ng dasal. Salamat sa Diyos at nasagot naman yung dasal. I was invited as a resource person in the congressional inquiry in the Senate with respect to the availment of the All-Purpose Act of PNB and the debt equity swap agreement between PDIC and PNB. I sided with the PNB. It's a long story, but tuwang-tuwa si PDIC sa akin. So sabi nila, how can we help you? Sabi ko sa PDIC, pwede bang lahat ng utang namin sa bangko, since you're not a bank, isama nyo na sa mga non-performing loans. Sa NPL, sa buyout na 10 billion na buyout net. At napasama nga. At yung 10 months to pay, 3 years, 2 years to pay, 5 years to pay, naging 10 years. At imbis na market-driven rate, T-day bill rate ang basihan plus 2% spread, gumaan yung cash flow namin and we were able to address that problem. We had to come up with a solution. That's the only way. We have to, imbis magreklamo kami, bakit ganito, we have to look for ways to address it. You have to adapt to it. That you need to address it. No? So, tawa ng Diyos, after six years, we were cited the Asian Institute Management as one of the most competitive small-sized cities in the Philippines. And when I started, we were the poorest city, by the way, in the Philippines. No? It's something based on data presented to us by the then National Statistics Coordinating Board, which is now PSA. So, bankrupt ka na nga, poorest city pa kami. Kaya matindi yung hinarap kong problema in 2001. But we used the city development strategy approach. We started addressing our fiscal problem para maka-implementa kami ng mga programa at hanggat inaayos pa namin, gumawa ng paraan para lobby with national government, with multinational and multilateral on how they can perhaps help us while we're still addressing our fiscal position until such time we were able to fix our balance sheet. Next slide. So, city development strategy approach, nag-line budget na kami, zero-based budgeting na rin. We reviewed all the projects there being implemented. Pag maganda, tinuloy namin. Continuity is very important, as I've said, pero kung proyektong wala namang pupuntahan, we had to stop it. No? And we already practice bottom-up budgeting, participatory kasi ang approach natin sa city development strategy, poverty-focused kami dahil kami nga ang poorest city in the Philippines. No? To ensure we promote inclusive growth. And in 2004, as I've said, we pioneered the use of the balanced scorecard. Things that we've done, some of the things that we've done. No? Next slide. Of course, that's the process. As in coming up with a strategic plan. Phase 1 is where are we now? Ano bang sitwasyon namin? Phase 2, saan bang direction? Vision yan, shared vision. 3, ano bang mga issue na dapat ma-address para kami makarating doon? At pang-4, ano dapat gawin para makarating kami doon sa vision na gusto namin marating? And of course, the vision as timeline, no? This is very important. Next slide. Then, lahat ng programa naka ano ito, based on livability, competitiveness, bankability, good governance, at bawat proyekto, especially in livability, naka-connect doon sa what used to be the Millennium Development Goals, and today it's called the SDGs. Next slide. On livability, next slide. May clamor for a city high school. We only had 9 high schools then. No high school in the population area, and we didn't have anything. So we had to borrow a classroom from the state university. And later on, we found out that there's land that used to be owned by the land being used by DPWH is owned by DepEd. And we had to ask DPWH to move to another area, had to look for a place for them. Nakakuha ko sa DNNR, they donated it to me, and I donated it donated it to us, and we donated it to DPWH. And we were able to, sa City High School, rin kaming pera. As I've said, bankrupt yung pag-umpisa. The people of Japan help us, na nalaman nila strategic ang plano. So they help us, and the City High, 4 years in Congress, it didn't, we were hoping that Congress will act on it for it to become a national high school. Hindi nangyari, but after 4 years, we topped the national achievement test, making it the #1 high school throughout the country, and through an administrative fiat ng DepEd, naging national high school. Next slide. And now we have 26 high schools, by the way. No internet access. At that time, set up na kami parang BPO. Bago pa lang ang internet at that time. Remember, this is in 2001, 2002, with the help of Ayala Foundation, we were able to address it, and somewhat was able to produce manpower for the BPO industry. Next slide. We have a very low participation rate. Dahil umpisa namin, siyam nga lang, sprawling, napakalaki ng land area ng lugar namin, almost 90,000 hectares with 157 barangays. So, ang daming hindi nag-aaral. The debate of the day is the transportation expense for the day or the ulam for the day. And most parents would say, we're hard up, huwag na lang kayo pumasok. And we told them, no, pasok sila. We're not a rich city or poor, but the only way for us to be able to address it is education and nag-time and motion kami. We provided buses for them. Now, since there are 26 high schools already, we started with an integrated high school system na ayaw ng DepEd in those days. Kinalaban namin, and now it's a non. And now we don't have that much number of buses anymore dahil halos malapit na yung mga high school sa mga tao, sa mga barangay. Next slide. Next slide. Daming mga batas we have to adapt to it. Wala kami magagawa. Pinasa ng Kongreso, pinasa Clean Air Act, Solid Waste, landfill, etc. Magtatanong kami paano gawin. Ang sagot sa amin, wala kaming alam. So sasabihin sa amin, pero kailangan yung gumawa. 300 million. Saan kami kukuha ng pera niyan? Paano gawin? Sagot sa amin, di rin namin alam. Bahala na kayo. Pag hindi nyo ginawa, problema yan. Pwede kayo makasuhan. So, sariling sikap, gumawa ng paraan, and Clean Air Act, USAID help us, and wastewater treatment system, we were able to get the training that we need, and we were able to develop, together with other LGUs na nakasama namin sa biyahe, of a wastewater treatment system, a decentralized one, using COCO-PIT, no? Passed the US EPA standard twice, and doon nang umpisa, no? Yung mga programa namin, and landfill, same, nakatulong sa amin yun. The people of Japan and our people were able to, our staff was sent to Japan for training, and imbis 300 million, 70 million, at tapos naumpisa pa lang yung disaster DRR law, Dream Law, German naman ang tumulong sa amin, no? So in fact, yung mga gamit namin nagamit pa sa Yolanda pagtulong doon sa Tacloban. Next slide. Umaasa kami sa national government makatulong sa informal sectors. Wala. Hirap talaga. So sariling sikap, came up with their own program, no? Localized one, localized CMP, etc. So we were able to cut by half the number of informal sectors in the area. And we became a resource center of HADSI, resource city of HADSI, pero isip-isip ko, wala naman tulong national for local. Next slide. Competitiveness, next slide. Ang problema namin, how can we compete? Wala kaming power. We belong to a power producing region, pero wala, maya-maya, puro walang kuryente dahil wooden poles kami, no? Created noise, and the mayor ako, they put up the most modern substation at the time ng NGCP, steel tower na kami, and we're connected to the 138 kV lines, or we're connected to the national grid. So pag magpo-problema sa latest source of power sa Tanguanan, we can get power somewhere else. Of course, it helps us sa electric cooperative so tumulong din tayo sa electric cooperative kahit hindi pwedeng makialam ang LGU, pero humingi sila ng tulong to fix their balance sheet. We help them, and from my class D or now AAA. Same with the water district. Bankrupt water district, hindi kami pwede may DLG circular dyan, pero humingi sila ng SOS. Report has to be upgraded. Again, looking at the Dream Law, ginamit ko yon para makapaglabi ng pag-ayos ng airport. Sabi ko, hindi pwedeng isa lang ang regional airport kasi Tacloban Airport is facing the Philippine Trench, no? Hindi masyado nakinig, pero naalala nilang sinabi ko. Then after Yolanda, they went back and said, tama ka pala. Now, next slide. Now it's a regional airport. Next slide. Walang mga farm-to-market roads. Limitadong pondo ng national government. I had to look for ways and lobby and was able to get funding abroad. And nang naayos na yung fiscal position ng government, naayos na yan. No? Next slide. Next slide. Puno na yan. Next slide. Develop ng sariling program. You wanna galing po for this. Next slide. Again, next slide. May problema ang port now kasi yung isang port namin napaka-shallow ng naantay pa ng high tide para makadock. So pinayos namin yung luma at nagkaroon ng bagong another port. Next slide. So dalawa ng port ngayon, both being utilized. So next. Walang nasayang dyan. Bankability. Kailangan yung mga investor mababawi yung investment, so you help them at kung sino nag-invest, assure them, try to provide some support so that you can encourage as many people to invest in the area. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. And of course, building resilience. Hindi lang response, but resilience to get enough knowledge on it. It's I seek the help of through the Department of Defense. Was able to attend a meeting in San Diego with the U.S. Navy and exercise together with allied forces from Japan, Malaysia, UK, Australia, among others. So paano magkaroon ng response kung may nangyayari, at the same time paano makatulong to ensure we're able to build a resilient community. Next slide. On governance. Next slide. You were one of the first ones. We became a resource city of DTI way back in 2003. Next slide. Ganon, naging available na yung technology, mano-mano to a computerized system. So ngayon, ang call of the day is digitalization. We have to keep on adapting to a changing environment. It really helped us. Next slide. Efficiency-wise, tumaas. Land titling program to help infuse additional capital to the local economy. Next slide. So kailangan may roadmap. Pag humihingi ako, naka-scorecard sa national government. Multi-year na. At hindi maganda ang kanilang ginawa on the first year, pinapakita namin naka-red font, failing grade sila. The following year, bumabawi sila. So, next slide. Of course, we want to Conrad and Denauer, some of the recognitions that we received. Next slide. Next slide. And the most important part, wala sa slide na yun, we were the poorest city when we started. And in 2012, I was already in Congress when NSCB, PSA presented their latest survey. After 6 years since we implemented a good number of things for our city, we were out of the top 10 poorest cities in the Philippines, and we recorded the highest reduction in poverty incidence, reducing it by 27.8%, topping all other cities in the Philippines. So class valedictorian kami nag-term out ako pagka mayor sa poverty reduction. So mission accomplished. For me, that's hindi yung mga recognition, but that's the best card that natanggap namin dito. So ngayon, ang punto ko lang dito, nagawa namin ng wala masyadong pondo, hirap kami. Ano na kaya ang meron? Ulitin ko, hindi to sa palakihan ng pondo, kundi paano gagamitin yung pondo. Kailangan nakaplano, may strategic roadmap, may strategic plan. Bawat departamento na makakatulong doon sa strategic roadmap ng community, yung vision nyo, na sana tugma rin sa vision ng vision natin 2040. Dahil pag nagawa natin itong lahat, talagang tunay na magiging engine of growth ang mga lokal na pamahalaan. Thank you and good afternoon.
Mr. Mel, for your insightful discussion. Thank you so much, Sir Mel, for your insightful discussion this afternoon. At this point, we would like to encourage our participants to ask questions for Mr. Mel. Sir Mel, you may type in your questions. Yes, sir.
In addition, also,
Yes.
challenge ko with the Mandanos Garcia ruling. Napaka-inward looking kasi natin mga Pinoy. Sana naman maging outward looking, no? We should be globally competitive, locally competitive, ma-product man or sa system natin, no? Bakit si Singapore, bakit si Korea? Si Korea ngayon nasa taas sila, si Singapore. Bakit? Dahil tinitingnan nila how to compete with the rest of the world. Nung araw, ang feeling natin sa mga artist, tayong pinakamagaling. Pero tingnan mo yung mga South Koreans, dahil hindi sila, isip nila, hindi lang matalo kung among themselves, but they were looking at how they're going to conquer the world. Now you have BTS, in the Oscars Award, sila ngayon, bida sila. So napakatindi, no? Sa lahat, technology na abot nila. And to some extent, Vietnam, naggera pa 1975, katatapos, and yet they accomplished what they have so far accomplished. Same with Singapore, no? They think globally, no? They would want to be on top always. So kahit lang sa aeroplano, they would want to be up there, yung Singapore Airlines, no? And for them to be able to do that, they look at the rest of the world. Kailangan tingnan nila paano sila magiging competitive. Lahat pinag-aaralan. Sa pag-aaral nila, nakita nila on a Sunday, their fuel consumption goes up and it affects their balance sheet. Pag na-apekto ang balance sheet, nagagamit sana yung gastos na yan, additional gastos sa ibang serbisyo. Pinag-aralan nila, bakit tumataas yung fuel consumption na Sunday? Pinagtyagaan at nahanap nila yung problema. Ang problema on a Sunday, yung periodiko sa aeroplano, napakakapal dahil classified ads. Added weight, ang engine ng aeroplano kailangan ng additional power, additional thrust, it consumes more fuel. So ang ginawa nila, on a Sunday, tinatanggal nila yung mga classified ads na yun para gumaan yung newspaper, na-reduce nila ang weight, bumaba ang cost, they remain to be globally competitive. Ganun dapat ang Pinoy din. It's high time for us not to compete among ourselves, but we try to not only compete among ourselves, but we try to compete with the rest of the world. Thank you.
Sir. We are receiving a lot of comments and congratulatory messages here in our Zoom meeting link chat box. So if you have questions or some message for our, of course, speaker for this afternoon, I'm opening now the floor for your questions. Again, just type in your questions in the chat box here in our Zoom link, or you may raise your hand para po directly po tayo makapag-ask ng questions kay Secmel. Anyone? Sir, I have question dito if wala pa po from our participants. First, how important is forecasting and multi-year planning, especially with the upcoming implementation of the Mandanas ruling?
Very important forecasting. In fact, future-proofing pa, no?
Yeah.
Future-proofing. For example, we spend so much on, you have to look at the urbanization rate, for example. No? Napaka-importante niyan. Baka mamaya, ang dami mong ginawa sa rural, ang tao lumipat naman sa urban area. No? Kasi ang hirap pigilan talaga nitong urbanization na ito. It's a global phenomenon that just we cannot stop. No? It's something that you have to deal with. Technology, paano yung mga klase ngayon? Naumpisan ito with the pandemic. Ito pa rin ba ang norm 10 years from now? Kailangan ng forecasting, no? I can recall attending a session in Australia kasi it's walang vice mayor, so it's the mayor that presides the council's meeting. Nag-observe kami sa kanilang meeting. This was in 2003. Ang pinag-usapan nila yung traffic nila in 2053. 50 years ahead. May mga technical people silang they were simulating already, no? Very important for us to do that in our community, no? And the advantage today, may mga software nang available. Unlike nung when we started, halos wala, bago pa yung internet, wala pang mga app na available, mga software na yan. Pero ngayon, ang dami ng instrument na pwedeng magamit. Napaka-importante natin, no? And in fact, we're teaching this sa DAP. Napaka-importante yung forecasting, no? Dahil yung plano yung gagawin. Kasi may risk din Sa bawat plano, nagsasubmit din tayo ng risk assessment. Anong possible risk that a program is going to face. Very important ang forecasting, very important. Kaya sabi ko, I started with finance. Pati yan, dapat pinag-aaralan natin. No? As I've said, there's an external shock that affects the global economy. In 1919, the Spanish flu. In 1929, natumba yung stock market sa US in 1939, the Second World War, fast forward the Asian financial crisis of 1999, in 2009 US recession, 2019 COVID-19. So what's next? So dapat naghahanda na rin tayo, baka mangyari sa 29-28. Dapat future proofing tayo, nakalatag tayo. And building a resilient community is very important, no? So hindi lang yung resilience sa infrastructure, but economic resilience as well. So kailangan na pag-aaralan yan. So napaghandaan, agriculture included, forecast. For example, forecasting is Mindanao. Ang estimate ng Mindanao is going to be the hottest place in the country. Yung mga sinasabi ng scientists by 2050. We just cannot disregard that. Baka mangyari. So ngayon pa lang, dapat dinidevelop na yung mga climate resilient na mga agricultural crops, no? Na kahit anong mangyari, tuloy-tuloy na food basket yung lugar. So tipong ganong forecasting.
That's very true, sir. And I would like to connect that with the importance of adaptability. So if I may ask, sir, how important is adaptability in terms of using these resources?
We have to adapt to a changing environment very fast. And anyway, we have to adapt. For example, grade 1, DepEd. As chair of the local school board, when I was mayor, makulit ako. Makulit akong kailangan natin baguhin untay ng pagturo natin sa first grade. Dahil ang mga bata ngayon, hindi pa pumapasok sa paralan, naglalaro na ng video game. Yung motor ng brain nila, ang bilis mag-process. So pagpasok sa grade 1, kung mabagal si teacher, they get bored. So we really have to adapt. We have to change the way things are because things are moving very fast. So nagbabago yung sitwasyon. So kailangan baguhin din siya, no? So kailangan mga tipong kahit mga bagay na yan dapat tinitingnan natin, no? So we have to adapt because as I've said, the world is changing very fast, but we should take advantage of things that are also changing. As we adapt, we take advantage of whatever is there. Digitalization is one that has already been mentioned. It can address traffic, it can reduce our carbon footprint, among other things na pwedeng gawin. But the only way for us to be able to sustain our growth is and address the many problems that we face is adapt and innovate.
Sir, it is commendable that the comment from Miss Lyra Magalang of Buwak, Marinduque, ang sabi po niya, political will po of the leader to really improve the development of its LGU. Best practice daw po ang nagawa ninyo sa Calbayog. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Ayan, sir. One last question. What should LGUs daw po focus now with the funds coming in due to the Mandanas ruling?
Actually, titingnan natin, when the local government code was passed, there was full devolution already. Ang kulang is full allocation. Kasi pinigilan pa nila, gusto nilang iba pa yung programa. So parang unti-unti na practice na tayo. No? So with the Mandanas Garcia ruling, dapat tayo mag-focus doon sa how do we scale up our services? And the only way for us to be able to do that is I'm appealing to all our local chief executives, invest in your department managers. Trust them. And we are here, DAP has a program on it as well. We are here willing to help our department managers. No? Kailangan maging strategic na tayo. We cannot continue being reactive. We have to be, we have to be proactive, strategic at that. No, kailangan may roadmap talaga tayong at lahat ng programa natuturuan ng ating mga departamento. Natutuwa kami sa mga estudyante namin. For example, gaganda ng mga produktong ginagawa. No? When they defend it, revalida, kahit yung mga local executive nila nabibigla sa pinipresent. At kung ganito ba naman ang klase political will ng local chief executives, yes. Then at the same time, they should invest in their people. May mga institusyon na willing tumulong. May mga scholarship na available. Pag nagawa kasi ito, every peso, nakaplano lahat, malayong ating mararating. Para sa akin, it boils down to planning. It's cliche. Failing to plan is planning to fail. Napaka-importante ng pagplano. We should support our planning office. Kung kulang man, as I said, huwag niyo munang isagad ang PS. through this is one way of helping our department managers by allowing them to get people who are knowledgeable on a certain thing, especially kung ang project is 3 years, 4 years. Digitalization, for example, kailangan ng highly skilled person dyan. So you might need some level of support. Dapat tinutulungan ang mga department manager dyan ng isang local chief executive, and in the development of these plans and programs, tapos implementation phase, napaka-importante that we're able to push the right button in every project. So bawat piso, kung nakaplano, tamang tao andon, maraming magagawa sa bawat bayan. Napaka-importante nun. Tiwala lang at suporta ng local chief executive, political will, and supporting them, supporting our department managers, and challenge them at the same time. No? Dapat pagbigyan natin. Kasi kung pag hindi binigyan ng opportunity, tanungin man lang. Kasi paminsan may mga department manager tayo, ang dami niyang mga ideyang nasa isipan niya. Pero ayaw, syempre, nahiyang magpresenta. Pero kung ang proseso ba naman, baliktad at tinatanong at kina-challenge pa, may naisip ka ba? Kung anong naisip niya, supportahan kita. Gawin mo yan. Maganda yan. No? So, we need to invest. But kahit na mag-invest tayo sa tao natin, very important, may strategic direction ang lugar, is strategic plan. It can be done, no? When kinuha ko as chair of the advisory board of the Army and the vice chair of the advisory board of the Council of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, from a negative trust rating to what they are today. In their transformation program, negative trust rating to positive trust rating, nagawa namin yon sa kanila. Dahil klaradong-klarado ang roadmap that by 2028, sila ay source of national pride.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for answering that questions. And if for those participants na wondering, no, kung ano po yung mini-mention ni sir, it's actually the local governments, executives and managers class. Yes po. So if you're interested to know more about this program, email us at DAP lamang po, and we are very much welcome. You are very much welcome to attend this class. At isa po si Sir Mel sa inyong magiging faculty in charge. Ayan. So with that, thank you so much to our participants for your questions. And of course, thank you, Sir Mel, for your discerning answers. At this point, we are nearing the end of our webinar series, sir. If I may just ask, one last question, one lesson that you would like this 196 participants here in Zoom link to take away from this afternoon's discussion, what would it be po?
Ano yung question ulit?
Take away, sir, one lesson that you would like the 196 participants to take away from our discussion this afternoon po. What would it be?
Labas narinig, labas dapat gawin sa local government. China-challenge ko pa yung alam nyo, marami na silang experience eh. Paminsan inaasa natin sa mga miyembro ng Kongreso anong dapat gawin. Balik rin kaya natin. Kayo ang frontliner eh. Mas alam niyo yung sitwasyon sa baba. No? Gusto ko sanang maging kasama ang mga department manager natin as a lobby group sa Kongreso sa mga dapat pang baguhin to improve the performance of our local government. No? Ako mismo, merong mga sariling mga tinutulak from curative medicine, may tinutulak ako sa agriculture, na mix, hybrid national, local subsistence, cash crop program national para define. Hahabang kwento if I'm going to explain it in detail, but yun ang inaasahan ko sana, no, sa mga natututunan natin, hindi lang sa webinar na ito, but anong natutunan nyo sa local government that you feel na kailangan pang para mag-improve, kailangan pang gawin o mabago sa ating mga batas, especially the local government code. Napapanahon ng kayo mismo, mga frontliners, ang mag-suggest sa Kongreso anong dapat i-improve sa existing na local government code for us to be able to perform our mandate, nga mas maganda pa yung performance natin dahil anong mga problema na yan sa ating current law ay ma-address pa siya.
As always, sir, great perspective po. With that, thank you very much, sir, for being once again kasama namin kayo in implementing this agile program. But before we let you go, sir, may I invite again Dr. Sikat, the presentation of certificates. The Development Academy of the Philippines would like to present the certificates of appreciation po to Mr. Melsonen Sarmiento and once again Dr. Charlotte Justin Jokno Sikat for being our resource persons for the One Step Ahead Priming for Full Devolution conducted by the Academy's Center for Governance held on February 22 to 24, 2022, of course signed by Attorney Engelbert C. Caronan Jr., MNSA President and CEO of DAP. Again, thank you so much po para sa inyo pong dalawa for giving us this time po, sharing your knowledge to all of us.
Thank you, Ren.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you po. At this point, if we have an opportunity to have a photo naman po with, of course, Mr. Melsonen, Sir Mel, let's have a photo lang po together with, of course, our 196 and counting participants. At this point, we have 8 frames pa rin naman po. Okay, so for the 8 frames, let's have a good smile for a group photo. Ayan, nakikita ko po ang LGU Tagapulan. Ayan, naka-group photo po sila. Alright, so for the first frame, let's smile in 3, 2, 1. Alright. Second frame, in 3, 2, 1. Third frame, in 3, 2, 1. Fourth frame, in 3, 2, 1. Smile pa rin po tayo. Fifth frame, in 3, 2, 1. Sixth frame, in 3, 2, 1. Seventh frame, in 3, 2, 1. And of course, sa ating last frame, in 3, 2, 1. Ayan, kagagandang ngiti para sa hapon pong ito. Like all good things, our webinar series must come to an end. Nakakalungkot, but we are upcoming agile programs for you to stand by. But before we proceed with our closing program, let us have Alright, let us proceed to the closing program. Alright. So, for the closing program, let's pause for a commercial. We would like to remind our participants that we will be launching our poll for today. Please make sure to answer our poll questions for your attendance. Prompt na po yung screen natin for the poll, so please answer. Good afternoon once again, participants, and welcome to the closing program of One Step Ahead Priming for Full Devolution. The past 3 days have been very informative, with our speakers sharing with you their updates, knowledge, and expertise, especially with the pivotal shift in fiscal policy. To officially close the webinar series, I would like to call the DAP Vice President and Managing Director of the Center for Governance, Ms. Imelda C. Caluen.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you, Karina. I hope that we can keep our participants for a few more minutes just to close this program. But I would like to start by thanking the local chief executives who are still with us today. Mayor James Yekek of Pitogo, Zamboanga del Sur, and Mayor Eleanor Dominguez of Castillejo, Zambales. And of course, to those local chief executives who were with us the past days, which include Mayor Corinthia Crisologo of Tineg Abra, Mayor Francis Anthony Garcia of Balanga City, Bataan, Mayor Mary Angeline Halili of Tanawan, Batangas, Mayor Buenafrido Berries of Calauan, Laguna, Mayor Erna Gokong of Tagapulan, Samar. I think this is a group na watching in plenary. And of course, the other department heads and staff of the local government that participated in this webinar. This would not have been possible without your participation, and of course, with the support of our very gracious Senator Francis Tolentino for his trust and confidence in the Academy to deliver a program like this. You know, he said last year, and he personally talked to us, that it's important to prepare the local government units, specifically the local leaders, in this very important transition to the full devolution. And so he is supporting the academy to deliver training programs and seminars like this, that you attended. And we called it adaptive and innovative local governance, for local executives. It is because that we are encountering a very fast-paced environment, very unpredictable, and the LGUs and local leaders and managers need to be adaptive and resilient. Many uncertainties, and as what SecMel pointed out, we need to be future ready, for the very disruptive environment that we may encounter in this kind of condition. Allow me also to thank our set of resource persons. So we've invited the critical departments who would give us an overall context, of what to expect in this devolution transition. So during the first day, we had Director Aris Macaspa of the Department of Budget and Management, and Director Annalisa Bonagua of the Department of the Interior and Local Government to give us updates on what's going on in this preparation for the full devolution. Particularly, we know that you are perhaps still preparing your devolution transition plan. And so we invited the agencies who may be or who are expected to give up some of the programs and help the LGUs prepare for this significant shift in the delivery of services and programs. So we thank our resource persons from the Department of Public Works and Highways, ASEC Eric Ayapana, and ASEC Jocelyn Iwane from the Department of Social Welfare and Development. And I think I still saw her. She's still with us, tuning in because I'm sure they are important. These national agencies are finding it important to hear what are the concerns or maybe the worries of the LGUs in terms of the transition process. And of course, we had the reactions from very high performing, I would say, and eminent local chief executives, Mayor Trina Pabik of Ojongan Romblon and Mayor Shelo Crisel Luistro of Tabaco City, Albay. So we try to have a balanced view through this webinar by hearing reactions from the local government, no? Because ultimately, you will be the ones who will be orchestrating the change in the grassroots. And of course, this afternoon was very exciting, no? Especially with what was shared to us by Dr. Justine Sikat. She's still with us today. I think she was with us since day one, and we really appreciate that she participated also in the Q&A, no? In day one or yesterday, I think, no? As she said that sharing the data or making the data accessible would be something considered as institutional innovation. And of course, we're happy to have again SecMel Senen Sarmiento, who has been very supportive in our program and for today's afternoon, sharing what he has done when he was still local chief executive and as a policymaker in the Congress, no, and also at the local level. So we appreciate the discussion shared today, no, by our resource persons. Of course, we value the questions and the sharing given by the participants. No? So you're more than almost 200 today, and in the past day, we actually reached almost 300 during day one. But we do understand that some topics may be more important for you to hear than the others because we assume you already know this. So maybe I just want to also share with you that the Development Academy, given its role in the Executive Order 138 implementation, this is part of some of the activities or the interventions that we are delivering for local government units. So in the executive order, the Development Academy of the Philippines is expected to work with national government agencies and perhaps train them also in the development of what we call the service delivery standards. So these are the sets of standards that is expected in the execution of programs that will be devolved fully, no, to the LGUs. So on the part of the national, that's what we're doing. But we have intensive training programs for local government managers, local chief executives, not only as part of this agile program that we launched through this webinar, but the I would say short-term course, but very intensive for the managers, no, of the local government units. And yun po yung na-mention ni Sec Mel, where we have him as our faculty in charge, our subject matter expert, and hopefully we can invite also ASEC Niwane when we have a session on the service delivery standards, and of course Dr. Sikat. No? So we hope we can invite them again to give a talk or a lecture on the same topics that we asked them to deliver today, so that we could reach as many LGUs as possible. So we hope you would be interested to participate in that program. I believe the team has provided you the link. And we are supposed to run 3 batches this year. And this is a scholarship for the eligible participants. So this goes through a very tedious selection process because it's offered at no cost to the local government units, no, specifically the target participants. So we hope that even we had just half-day sessions for this 3-day webinar, that you have gained purposeful knowledge on what it takes or what is needed to become adaptive and innovative in local governance. So that's very important at this point in time when we are still in this situation. And we hope that this has been enriching, no, as far as giving you fresh perspectives and hopefully rewarding too that the needs of your constituents, no, and are considered, no, in this very important change in our setup, no, in the delivery of programs and services. So we look forward to your participation in our other offerings under this Agile program. And of course, to the local government, executive and managers class program, which is also ongoing. So we hope that everyone continue to stay safe and happy EDSA anniversary to everyone. It's holiday tomorrow, so have a weekend to all. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you, VP Kaluen, for that encouraging closing speech. And thank you, participants, for being with us for the last 3 days. Plus, but please stay. But before we let you go, maybe we could have, at the end of this activity, we would like to invite you, local chief executives and key functionaries, to the Senator Tolentino Agile Training Program. This priming activity is simply the beginning of this training program. As part of its mission, the DAP provides platforms for learning, training, and skills building for local chief executives, enabling them to successfully perform their primary governmental functions and emerge as faithful advocates for adaptive, innovative, and sustainable leadership and governance. We hope that in the coming months, your offices will grace and participate at the Agile program activities. For more information, please watch this video. Again, thank you very much for being with us during this eventful 3 days. A few reminders, please don't forget to fill out our evaluation forms for this activity. You may click the links provided in the chat box. I would also like to remind our participants that we will be launching our poll for today. Please make sure to answer again our poll question for your attendance. Session materials and electronic copies of your certificates will be sent via email. Again, on behalf of the Development Academy of the Philippines, thank you for joining us in One Step Ahead, priming for full devolution, and see you in the future activities of DAP. Thank you so much.